Dampier. Al, you're there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Fantastic. So we have a great healthcare panel. I mean, these guys are really spectacular, and they're leaders in their field and in their areas, and they're going to talk about a variety of things. We're going to try to do it in about 45 minutes, but if we go over long, it's not really a big issue because I expect the day to go about 10 to 15 minutes over long anyway. So, and they've got a lot to say, so I'm not going to stop them. So, Al, why don't you introduce your speakers, and we'll go from there.
Good morning. I'm Al Dampier. I'm your moderator this morning, and I'm the managing partner of Dampier Consulting Group. We work with emerging organizations in developing their C-suite and their boards, and then I'm also an investor and a serial entrepreneur. So we have a dynamite panel for you this morning. And Marty, the worst words you could have said is we can run over because we're starting. We can set the day off on the wrong foot, which we'll try not to do. So I'm going to lean on my the people on the panel and just allow them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about what they do. So who wants to go first? Sean, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Morning, everyone. My name is Sean Doolan. I am the healthcare partner over at Global Founders Capital, GFC. We are a large globally distributor firm, 18 offices around the world, headquartered in Berlin, a couple billion AUM. Very much makes us one of the largest European-based VCs. We are generalists, sort of investing across all categories, but I would say where we really differentiate ourselves is we like to invest early. So we're talking pre-seed, seed, selectively Series A's with the expectation that we can invest across multiple financing rounds, if not be a full lifecycle partner to our companies. I joined about 2.5 years ago to launch our health and bio practice. And in the last 2 years, we have very much become one of the most active, if not the most active early stage health and bio practices in market.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. And welcome. Josh.
Good morning. Josh Roach from Lloyd Capital Partners. We are a single family office. I manage the investments of the office with a co-partner, and we focus on a number of asset classes and segments in biotechnology. Precision medicine is one of them. And we often co-invest with other families and put investment vehicles together for access points.
Thank you, Josh, and good morning. And let's hear from Sanket.
Good morning. My name is Sanket Chauhan. I'm a physician by training. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sanket. Good morning.
Okay, perfect. So I'm a physician by training. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. I'm employed in one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. I also have my own company, medical robotics company that we started amidst COVID, and we are doing a Series A raise right now. So that's my background.
Thank you, Sanket. And Joan from New York.
Hi there. I'm in New
Joan.
York. Hi, good morning. I'm the CEO of a company called Curemark, and we are our platform technology and our first drug target is for autism, and we've completed 2 phase 3 clinical trials and plan to submit a BLA likely at the end of this year. And we also probably will go public sometime in the very near future. So excited to share a little bit about Curemark this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. We're glad you're here. And Heather, let's hear from you, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Heather Potters. I am the founder of PharmaJet, which is a needle-free injection technology. We deliver a fast fluid injection. We're focused on vaccines. And so as you can imagine, kind of now is our time. I have a private equity background and lived and worked in Central and Eastern Europe for about 20 years, looking after 3 closed-end funds. And so being an entrepreneur is a little different for me, but we've been at this for a while. And then in addition to that, from time to time, I invest in other healthcare things, including an overlap with Joan, respectively, in Curemark.
Very good. Thank you, Heather. So let's jump right in. So there's been a lot going on in healthcare lately, a lot with the pandemic. Sean, would you kick us off and talk a little bit about where you see healthcare and life sciences and what's going on now?
A lot to tackle there, and I'll defer to some of my more articulate and intelligent counterparts on more of that. So, last year has been a whirlwind in a number of different areas. I would say in general, we saw a flush of capital broadly across early stage and really late stage healthcare. I mean, unprecedented levels of venture funding across healthcare. And where we're seeing that quite a bit is not just from folks who have been in the space for the last 5, 10, 20 years, but a lot of generalists. So a lot of excitement in the space, which is, great in a number of different, for a number of different reasons. That said, I'm curious to hear how people are thinking about sort of price to value in this market. Personally, I have been investing at the earliest stages, and early in the COVID and our lockdown, I would say, during the darker moments, March, April, May of this last year, once we started to see the markets, the private markets come back in venture with real sort of fury around May, June, prices really started to take off. And I think that was, that's the case sort of broadly across venture. But for me personally, started to focus more so on pre-seed and seed versus the Series A stage. Series A's in healthcare, for a variety of different reasons, tend to be sort of a make or break financing round. But in this particular market, if you have a semblance of product market fit, the premium that you're trading at that Series A going into a Series B, it really is at an all-time high. So you're seeing a bifurcation in healthcare, at least from the venture lens, where if you have the capital means to be able to go early, you are seeing this sort of fight for ownership that much earlier, at seed versus Series A, at Series A versus Series B, but also, seeing a lot of growth capital being piled on from folks who would typically be coming in at Series C's, D's, and, sort of late stage venture at Series A, Series B markets. And so there's a lot of excitement in the space. Frankly, I'm starting to, I'm curious to see where things are going to shake out over the next 12 months and, where that excitement lasts. But it's an exciting time from a venture perspective to be in healthcare. And I think for a variety of different healthcare reasons, we are very much walking into a period, whether it's in the next, 3 to 5 or, 7 to 10 years, where I expect to see, truly, novel innovation in the space.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Sean. And Josh, what can you add, and where do you see the markets going in healthcare now that the pandemic has been around for a while?
I think the pandemic's given a lot of folks the opportunity to realize maybe there are gaps in their portfolio when it comes to, either broader healthcare or maybe narrow segments, whether it's health and awareness or biotechnology, precision medicine. And they've seen the kind of the exciting growth in the space. There's clearly been lots of capital that's come into the market. So I think it's presented a lot of questions for folks, like, how do we access this space? And I think we can go deeper into this topic, but how do we access this space, and what does it take to access it successfully? I think has a number of challenges that I'm happy to talk more about, but it's kind of, in my world, I think back at the family office set, and most family offices have a significant gap in allocation to this space. And not necessarily broadly healthcare, but more specifically precision medicine, biotechnology, kind of early stage drug discovery. And there's good reasons for why they have allocations. But I think the allocation needs to close over time. And I think there's significant interest coming from family offices and smaller institutions, making sure they're getting access to this wildly exciting and really important space.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. And I'll throw this out to all the panelists. Where do you see digital health going? Are there other trends that are really important right now for us to consider? Anyone want to step up?
I'm happy to. So, I'd say one area that I'm quite excited about is the virtual care delivery system. I am very much, even with, call it, say, back to normal in a post-pandemic world. I don't quite believe we're going to be back in the world that we were when we stepped into this. But I think my expectation is that within the next 5 years, 7 years, we're going to have a far more ubiquitous and comprehensive virtual care delivery system. Now, there is a lot that entails, everything from the actual care delivery itself. We're seeing a rise in a lot of these sort of persona and condition-based models, frankly, starting direct to consumer, and then quickly building the type of traction and legs to be able to sell into both the employer and payer markets. But also I would say the stuff it's probably a little bit less sexy, but frankly, probably where we're going to see the most value is the enabling infrastructure that is going to be required to be both built and scaled to underpin this virtual care delivery system. So everything from how we optimize a clinician workforce to be able to deliver care both in a sort of analog and a virtual world, how we think about things from like remote patient monitoring to those types of items, and how do we sort of bridge the sort of traditional in-person visits to what we're seeing, whether sort of being able to deliver care and receive care and via video, telephonically, whether in an async manner or at home. And so it's not myself, but a lot of others, far smarter than I, but I just fully believe that we're going to see the strengthening of a virtual care delivery system as we continue to see reimbursement be attached on the back of that, to suggest that in and of itself is going to be a core pillar as part of our broader care delivery system in the coming years.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes, it's Joan.
Hi, Joan.
We had an ongoing clinical trial, long-term data capture, and we were able to, I was in Qatar last March, and when I came home, I knew that this virus was coming here because it was coming there. And so we use digital data capture, but on site at the clinical trial sites, we were able to easily transfer that to the home base and with, sort of video capture. So we were able to easily change that kind of on a dime. And so I think that it's gonna, have the underpinnings going forward.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing. And Heather, you have a really interesting company and some things that are happening pandemic, post-pandemic, and a bright future ahead as well. So would you comment a little bit about the pandemic, what's that's done to your organization, but also where you see your organization going?
You bet. So given that we're optimized for vaccines and very specifically for a reason, we tend to see a bigger, better, faster, longer, stronger immune response for certain kinds of vaccines, or we can move from the muscle to the skin. And then on the top, we can attract needle phobic patients. We have kind of this triple whammy of relevance right now. We started the year migrating from our relationship with BARDA on pandemic influenza to actually COVID. We have 18 collaborations across the world with partners in 10 countries, and one of which we're scaling for now to about 250 million shots. The exciting thing, I think, is that not only now is everyone aware that our economic prosperity is linked to standard of care, healthcare in the form of immunization, and that we all share the disease burden. But I think it's really an optimistic time in that we've seen regulators move really quickly. We know they can, and it's going to unleash a tremendous amount of innovation that we've never seen before. So not just in immunization, obviously, but in the periphery. For instance, Curemark even has a relevance for COVID. I think a lot of people have kind of tried to do that. Some of it is sticky, but everybody's thinking outside the box. And I think that's a really healthy way to look at the future of regulatory and healthcare, because in the past, I think that the bar has been a little bit too high. And so people just don't try, or there are medical developments that happen in other places in the world where regulators can move quickly.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Al, can I just jump in here for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
We ran a poll and there's some polling questions, but the number one reply was, what's the importance of the management team? So as you guys go through your discussions of what you're doing, if you can just point out the management team that you work with, if you're a venture, and also if you're like an investor, how important a management team is to you, what's the relevance, et cetera. So just want to jump in here for 2 seconds.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. I was going to bring that up. And of course, that's all I do. So I'm really interested. I'm really glad to see that, and perhaps not really surprised at the management team, but we can add that to the conversation. Joan, a lot of changes going at your organization as well, and you elaborated about what the pandemic's done, but why don't you share a little bit about where you're headed and bring up your management team as well, so you have some interesting board members.
Yeah, so we are, we are getting ready to submit our BLA to FDA, which is very exciting. Autism is one of the largest unmet medical needs in the world. When we started this, we thought a little bit about the US, and we knew that it was growing in the EU, but never did I think it would be so global. And so we know that there's a large demand for there will be a large demand for our treatment ultimately. And it will also open up other avenues for people to look at autism as something that they can treat. Right now, there's been so many failures in the area that people have sort of given up looking at things. So we're excited about that. And as we build our organization, we've added some new board members, one who has real relevance in terms of our product for autism. So she's been at Genentech. She was at the Gates Foundation. Our motto is, this is all about the kids, and getting this drug to the kids is really important. And there'll be lots of kids who can't afford to have this, but yet they're going to need it. So we want to make sure that however we do this, that it will get to all the kids who need it globally.
Thank you, Joan. And what does your organization need moving forward?
So I think we're going to need
your organization is Curemark, so I apologize. What does Curemark need moving forward?
We're going to need, some commercialization people. We will need some other board members, people with other experience. So I think as we build our team, we're being very intentional about it and making sure that each hire, adds to what we already have existing. So
yeah, very, very good. Thank you. And Josh, I wanted to come back to you and ask where you see some of these changes happening as far as the investments as well.
So let me just start by saying, as a family office, we invest across a bunch of different asset classes. But when it comes to biotechnology and life sciences, it presents really a different set of challenges. And this relates to the question that Marty brought up in the poll results about the management team. We find that investing in the space is significantly more challenging than other asset classes, namely because the structural problem that the best managers out there in the space typically have large scientific either backgrounds or management folks on their team. So there's both a high component of scientific or medical background and financial expertise combined in one. And so that creates a really interesting set of folks. So we see the best management teams out there really have a very large background of scientific and medical degrees in the biotechnology space, in molecular biology or chemistry, and very fine-tuned financial expertise and a background in generating consistent performance. So one of the challenges in biotech is, how do you get access to the space that's not so volatile? Everyone knows if you invest in biotech, it can be very volatile. So how do you get access to the space, but manage wealth, generate wealth, and importantly, preserve wealth, and get access to those return profiles without all the volatility? And we found that instead of investing directly, which a lot of folks do, and we've invested directly in other spaces, it's much more difficult for us to generate the in-house expertise to invest directly in individual companies. So when it comes to biotechnology, we really focused all our efforts in identifying best-in-class managers out there. We think that's probably one of the better ways for emerging investors, and I say family offices or ultra-high net worth, who have not had maybe the right allocation but want to start investing in this space. We think that's a great way to do it until you think you might have access to your own expertise. That is not something we see ourselves doing.
Right.
So I'll just finish by saying that we really are focused on creating access for us and our co-investors directly to best-in-class managers in the early stage, late stage, and public space across biotechnology.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Josh. And Senkat, let's come to you for just a moment. We haven't talked about your organization, where you are, and what you see the future.
Yeah, so we were actually interesting because when we started raising our seed round right below the COVID, January 1st, 2020 is when we started raising, and we came back from JP Morgan, things were looking good, and then COVID hit us. So I think from our perspective, what we did is that we really focused on the fundamentals, and the fundamentals was what are we going to do with the money, and that was in an early stage company, it is hitting the milestones. And that became our primary focus. And then we found creative ways for cost cutting. And, with the capital raise that we had, we were able to hit the milestones. And now we are proceeding for Series A. So, we have our automatic intubation robot. It's focused on anyone who's involved in intubation. That might be a pre-hospital setting. It might be an anesthesiologist. And the intent is to just insert it in the mouth and it does the rest. And it's portable, it's handheld, uses AI and ML algorithms to do the insertion. So we just hit the milestones, and that's how we have got a prototype built, and we are ready for Series A now.
Senkat, is your device something that you will see in first responders' hands, or it's going to be restricted to the hospitals?
It is going to be in everyone who does intubation, so that can be first responders. Interestingly, the most error rates, the most inexperienced in a way, I would say, is the people who are first responders. Anesthesiologists in the OR, they are highly experienced, but
of course,
the 20-year-old medic who's at the back of an ambulance trying to intubate, and the patient is really dying. I mean, nobody is really dying in an OR. Field is where the biggest errors happen. So you put this thing in their hands, and they put it in the mouth, and it does the rest. The intent is to bypass the acquisition of skills, because acquisition of surgical skills are complex. So that was the intent behind that. We're focused on patient safety, because this was a big patient safety issue in most of the hospitals and pre-hospital settings. I mean, the impact was, the problem was so bad that the current recommendation is that pre-hospital medics should not even try to intubate, just bring them in, because of the errors and the complications caused due to intubation in the field. So
very good. Thank you, Senkat. And Heather, we chatted the other day about some interesting things with your organization, PharmaJet, and you're at a very interesting inflection point. Would you like to share a little bit about that and what you see as the future, since you have some interesting options?
Yeah, it's very exciting again for us because of the relevance around immunization. What's interesting is that particularly for nucleic acid vaccines, it's messenger RNA and DNA, kind of now the household names, is we typically make those work several-fold better than needles. We have more than 140 development programs sponsored by 60 different partners around the world. And so that encompasses all of the COVID scenario too. But now that we've seen that messenger RNA vaccines, come to market and are approved for use and have a pretty significant safety profile, I think there will be more and more of those. We have more than 50% of our portfolio in nucleic acid, and the project that we're scaling for now is actually, it's a DNA candidate. It's in phase 3, but more importantly, it's our intradermal device. So rule of thumb, you can move from the muscle to the skin, and about 80% less is the same in immune response. And we do that really well. We're part of things like the polio eradication initiative. We've got lots and lots of clinical data and also global claims. But in this case, this vaccine that is headed towards commercial stage will not have cold chain issues, and less is more. It will be the lowest cost approach for the entire world. And so I think it sets a wonderful kind of precedent, not only for, again, vaccine developments and the rapid sequencing of things to address disease threats that have no cure today, but we'll see that the regulators can and will bring more of those solutions forward to the mainstream. And meanwhile, I'm a believer that COVID's here to stay. This is going to be like your annual flu mix. So it really makes PharmaJet even more relevant, I think, than the standard flu shots that we can deliver. the rule of thumb is that we can do it in a cheaper way, in a better way, in a faster way. And I don't think it's just related to COVID.
Thanks. Joan, what do you foresee as the future with you, since a lot's going on with your organization too, and as you posted in the chat where you are in your Series A?
Yeah. So yeah. So we're beyond the Series A, right? So we're looking at a pre-IPO round actually now, as we move forward towards the IPO. And I think that the platform that we have we will start to expand it more. We've spent a lot of time researching. We have over 300 patents globally, and so I think that we now will look at that. We do have an indication for COVID, which we will start with some investigator-initiated trials probably in the next 2 months, and look forward to expanding that platform. There's a lot of unmet needs in this world, and I think that we can help with some of them. And that's a really important thing, I think, for us as we go forward. Our next targets will be schizophrenia as well as Parkinson's. We have, preliminary work that we've done. We have very robust data with mice with schizophrenia and being able to look at that and to attenuate behavior. So we're excited about the future, about expanding the platform for all these conditions, which there seems to be, a large unmet medical needs, right? And so with not a lot of expansion in terms of technology. So we're excited for the future and look forward to addressing some of these things.
All right, thanks, Joan. I apologize. I did mean pre-IPO. I was thinking about one of the other companies' panelists. You mentioned schizophrenia and Parkinson's and neurology and some other areas. Those markets compared to autism, how do you see those moving forward?
So 1% of the world has autism. 5% of the world has schizophrenia, which is a startling statement, but it's very, very real. And so, and of course it's, schizophrenia is a diagnosis. Some people have it worse than others, but the meds are terrible. People stop taking them after a while and relapse. And so we think that, what we have can be standard of care. And then if things need to be added on, they can be. But I do think that we are looking at the physiology of those conditions. So with Parkinson's, we're looking at, phenylalanine and the way to replace that in a way that the body can actually utilize a lot of it. And same with autism, et cetera. So we're looking at enhancing the body's normal physiology in order to be able to help combat those things.
Very good. Thank you. And Sanket, we haven't heard from you in just a little bit. What do you see as the future for your investments?
So the future for our investments would be, we're building a whole team around it. We have been using partners, which have been great. But I think it's time for us to start building the team, and we have identified most of the players who will be doing. I think that is why we are focusing on getting the funding now. And once we have the funding, then we are ready to pull the trigger on some of these things.
And how big is your team right now? How large is your team now?
Just founders right now, and everything else we have outsourced. And that is one of the ways that we have been able to, put our cash burn rate down during the last year, because other companies at our stage are spending probably $100,000 a month, just as their burn rate. But we have just outsourced everything for now, got an early prototype on, and we are doing Series A based on that.
Thank you. And Heather, coming back around to you, you had an inflection just recently. Are you going to grow or exit, or what do you foresee as the future, if I can just be very direct?
You bet. So we have scaled platforms, and we have capacity increase already underway for our global polio eradication initiative. But separate from that, we're now scaling another 250 million shot capability for our COVID partner. They happen to be India based. And so they may ask us to do one more of those, or some of our other partners may ask us to do the same. So we've always positioned PharmaJet as being a building block for someone else. We're high net worth and family office funded. So we are actually retaining an investment bank this year to position ourselves for liquidity in the next couple of years. But we're working really hard. It's going to take us another 6 to 9 months before that new capacity is fully in place. So it represents a milestone, I think, because it's our intradermal platform. In other words, we're setting a precedent by moving from the muscle to the skin. So 80% less is the same or better in immune response. And I think that's going to unleash a lot more value and a lot more need among our existing channels of use today.
Very good. Thank you so much. We're closing into our time limit, so I just want to be sensitive to that as we move forward, since we're impacting the rest of the day. So I'd like to just set each of you up for some closing comments. So
hey, Al, you've got 10 minutes, so you got time to take Q&A from the from the group and answer some of the polling questions.
All right.
Okay.
So where would I find those questions? Do you have any questions from the group? We'll open it up now. Well, let me ask my panelists first. Is there anything that you'd like to say that we didn't cover already?
I'd ask Joan actually to explain the mechanism of how her treatment works. Would you mind, Joan?
Sure, I'm
Thank
happy
you, Heather.
to. So I'm happy to. So we know that children with autism have a deficiency of serotonin production in their brain. So early on, serotonin is made in the gut and in other places and the brain. But the majority of that serotonin is made between the ages of, birth and the 5th year, in that period of time. Children with autism only produce about 60% of that. The initial finding, which spurred the company to be formed, was a finding that there's a deficiency in digestive proteases in the kids with autism. So if you have a deficiency of proteases, you're going to have low availability of amino acid pool, for example, for tryptophan, and therefore you're going to have a dearth of production of serotonin, et cetera. So what we do is we replace that, those enzymes, and we're able to get enhanced protein digestion. Kids with autism anecdotally don't eat much protein at all. And so we believe that it has to do with this digestive issue. It's really a gut-brain problem as we're looking at it. And again, it's a spectrum, right? So there are lots of reasons why children have autism. Some of them have other conditions that have autism symptoms. Some of them have, trauma early, and they have autism symptoms. We're really talking about the kids that have no apparent reason for their having autism. And we have found that this deficiency exists in about 2/3 of the kids. And that's how it started. The body assimilates these amino acids, not like in supplements, like when you take a tryptophan or some of those, amino acid powders, et cetera. The body doesn't uptake them that way.
Right.
They take them in ditripeptides, right? And you would know that. And so that's what we're doing. We're actually replacing a way that the body can utilize those things, especially in the very early, age groups. And we've had some great results in our clinical trials.
Great, thank you, Joan. And a couple of questions for all the panelists right now. So what are the best sectors to invest in that are not your own? Anyone want to comment? No one has a thought on that one?
Look, I'll just take it since no one's stepping up.
Thanks, Josh.
I'll answer the next question too, and then people can follow on. We invest across all access class, all areas within therapeutics and digital health. So we invest in a whole subset of managers and different access points as well. So it covers kind of all spectrum. So I don't have a favorite. I think that the best in class managers know where that's going to be, and they're allocated that way. But let me switch to the next question, which is, what are the different ways family offices and others can access these areas? Because there's really interesting. You can access it via private equity. You can access and/or venture, right? One and the same, right. Early, late stage. You can access it via investment managers trading public securities. You call them hedge funds or long only managers.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, you can access it via ETFs. And those are at least 3 different ways that you can manage it. And we've put a lot of thought into how we are managing it that way. And I'm happy to speak to other folks. I sent over my LinkedIn profile to think about that, because there's really, it's a new way to invest in biotech. And how do you do it? It's more complex, but I think the best way to do it, if you don't have a long history in investing in biotech and healthcare, then my suggestion is you seek out best-in-class managers. And if you don't want to play it that way, and if you don't have access points or you don't want to pay the fees, then there's a number of ETFs out there that are reasonable ways to access the market that I would encourage people to check out. And happy to.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Do you ever look at fund secondaries, or besides fund secondaries, like workouts?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the reality is lots of healthcare ventures don't do too well, and then somebody comes in and works it out and they take off, right? Do you ever look at that? Does the rest of the group ever look at that kind of stuff?
I'm going to take a pass on that. Maybe Sean has something to say about that. I'll just say quickly, in order for us to recognize a challenge in a secondary, we just don't have that level of expertise. So we're literally relying on our healthcare managers for that level of expertise and whether they think there should be a workout. I mean, we think it's hard enough to choose the best managers in healthcare, let alone identify a single opportunity in a distressed healthcare company.
Can I add a little controversy here, where I've raised $71 million from high net worth and family office investors for PharmaJet. And I believe that there are a number of fund managers that are pretty risk adverse right now. And a lot of their LPs are saying, don't call money, right? It's not okay with me. So what we found is that when the world crashes, family offices can go direct. And I think that's a hugely valuable and important thing for really promising healthcare deals. It's not because they're against institutions. I think sometimes there's a mismatch in timing. So for certain investors who can have the capability to go directly or have the intelligence and the interest in going directly, it's a really important and valuable time, because there's a whole bunch of companies out there looking for cash today where they may be engaged with the institutions, but the institutions are just not closing.
Yeah. Sean, you deal with the early stage companies in the seed rounds. So if someone is looking to develop a company when cash is tight or different markets are looking differently at this point, what's the best way for them to find access to capital?
Yeah, well, first off, I'll say that it's not difficult to access capital right now. Capital is flowing like milk and honey. And so you don't have to necessarily be, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to get, frankly, a couple million out the gate in this market. It's not that difficult.
I don't know if I agree with that, Sean. That's a tough call. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I mean, just look at the numbers, right? We are seeing unprecedented amount of venture funding in this market, and just quarter over quarter in 2020, we just continue to see rise over rise. Now, I will say, with respect to where a lot of that capital is being allocated, we are seeing a disproportionate amount of that going towards more and more of these mega rounds, these sort of quote unquote mega rounds, which are 100+ million. Where I would say, listen, I'm biased here, but I have been playing in the early stage health tech sector for the last 7 years or so, and what was very much I would say obvious at that time was just pronounced that much more so in the last 12 months, being an early stage health tech, broadly digital health, whatever you want to call it. While there's quite a bit of capital flowing, I would argue quite strongly that's a fairly inefficient market right now with respect to the knowledge asymmetry on both sides of the table as it relates to being able to discern, quite frankly, the strength of an idea. And when you are investing that early, you're largely investing on the back of the strength of an idea, as well as the the management and the market opportunity. And it has, I see so much capital coming in. However, there is a lot of generalist capital coming in where from great firms, like from a venture perspective, really splashy, sexy sort of brands that are deploying, who quite frankly don't know necessarily the products or models that they're getting behind, or even have the strategic networks at their at their disposal to be able to go to bat for their companies once they invest, i.e. in the form of, bringing top advisors, being able to, promote high quality hiring, as well as being able to put their networks to work to be able to accelerate, commercial and distribution advantages for these companies. And so and on top of that, the types of products and models that we're seeing now in early stage digital health, quite frankly, could not have even been built 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so you're seeing this new guard of both companies that are being built in the space, whether it's in a direct consumer format, where they're seeing more SaaS type models, where you're seeing the sort of, margin profiles and just unit economics that you would see in maybe an enterprise SaaS company, come to light. And what I'm seeing is that there's this sort of increasing, division between folks who have been historically investing in healthcare, largely in services, trying now to figure out how do you invest in these early stage companies that have completely different, completely different cost structures, unit economics associated with them, different distribution channels and commercial strategies that are becoming, that are very much viable companies, right? You can build, for instance, in healthcare now.
So Sean, let me, in the essence of time, let me interrupt you quickly here, because I know we're running out of time. So as an early stage investor, how does someone get to you? Because there's a lot of people who aren't interested in early stage investment.
How does an investor in myself get to me, or how?
No. How does someone with a company find these early stage investors? Because they're not hard to find. I mean, they seem to be rather difficult to find.
Yeah, I would say
the money's there, but getting access to it seems to be a challenge. So I'm trying to bridge a gap here.
Yeah. Hey,
yes.
I have a comment on that.
Okay, thanks, Josh.
This is one of the biggest problems I've seen in the industry.
I agree.
Really talented folks. Some of the folks on the panel today, coming out of med school, have a biotech background, have a medical background, and they're specialists in their industry, and yet they don't understand how to access capital markets.
Right.
Particularly, early stage capital, friends and family office capital that is often launched. And on the flip side of that, you've got family offices and maybe small institutions that really don't understand this space, and they also don't know how to identify. So there's a structural gap that these people are not able to kind of connect yet. And so there's a bunch of folks that are working on kind of solving for that. And that's one of the projects we're working on as well, from an organizational standpoint, from a community-based project. How do we meld those two groups of people so we can facilitate that capital flow at the earlier stage?
Great. I think that's going to be the topic of our next conversation. I agree with you.
So we have to jump.
Yeah, so let's wrap up. Are there any other comments, questions? And thank you to my panelists.
Can you hear me, Al?
Yes.
Okay, let's wrap up. So thanks so much, guys.
Yep.
Great job.
We are. Thank you.
And so one of the observations I want to make, just getting back to Josh's point, so there's like this great Anderson Horowitz podcast, and it's like unbelievable how good it is. And they always talk about how in-network deals come. Obviously I look at more intently than out-of-network deals. So if you can network your deal, that's always better. Outside of networking your deal, getting to know people. A lot of people approach family offices, but they don't know anything about the family office. I mean, you have to research people. And I'll just tell one little story, which is that we did a healthcare-oriented family office conference maybe 2 or 3 years ago in New York. And one of the guys was like a 60-year-old veteran. He had started 3 other companies. They were successful. He was like a PhD and a doctor, and he had the hardest time raising capital. Meanwhile, like his son, who was 25 years old, out of MIT, and his other group of MIT guys, they raised like $15 million in like 3 weeks for a healthcare venture. It was digital healthcare. So it's always hard, and sometimes the relationships actually matter a lot. So that's my parting thought: is to work on relationships if you're looking for capital.